Hello and welcome to La Jolla Babylon, Season 1, The Making of a Suburban Punk. A podcast where I tell stories of my unsupervised Gen X youth to my coddled millennial little sister who happens to be the funniest person I know, the writer, actor, and comedian Katie Hartman. I'm your host, Aaron Hartman.
What? That's my French.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's so good. How are you?
I'm really good.
Yeah?
Yeah, just kind of, my family is in New York right now.
Yes.
I slept till 10 today.
Uh-huh.
Which
and how was that? Oh, wait, I'll tell you how it is. Great. Because I do it all the time.
I know, but it fucked my day up, actually, because, I wasn't, ready to do anything until, 11:30. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean. That's fair. We did have a show last night.
Yeah. How was the show?
Great. It was really good. Yeah.
Good.
I think we had 30 people, which is not bad. It's just we break even, I feel like, at 31. Or we start getting paid at 31 because all the expenses for our musician and all these other things. But
it's crazy how doing independent art, especially the sort of performance stuff, it's just so fucking expensive. I mean, obviously, especially in New York, where you are less likely to have a basement for practice space and or an outbuilding for your art or whatever, but you have to rent all that shit. But unless you're independently wealthy or whatever, there has to be something in the back of your mind going this needs to be recoupable. Do you mean I need?
Yeah. Well, you have to just believe in it so much that
yeah.
You're well, somebody somewhere will look at this and be I'll spend money on it. What are we listening to today?
Oh yeah. So today we are listening to 3 chapters. 17, 18, and 19. The first one is about my stepfather, who is called Gene here. Okay. And he was, he was it's funny, it was a complicated relationship with a simple man. He was
that's an amazing sentence.
Thanks. It's true. I mean, he was, and the story is that it was so all over the map, but I think I try to distill what it was to have a new guy come into your house and then just sort of grow up with this same guy and sort of start seeing each other as people all of a sudden, as men, and it's not always great,
right.
Famously stepfathers not always great. I just came up with this concept.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Get ready. The Peabody Awards are calling.
I invented this thing.
It's called Shitty Stepdads, and I think it's going to be huge. You want to get on the ground floor of this right now. 555, I hate my step.
Yeah. I hate my step. Yeah, and then there's a little kind of interlude about graduating 9th grade, but then the last one is a little bit of an experiment, and I don't want to give it away, but we could talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, the last one is a document that I found going through folders of dads after he died.
Okay.
And I was like, holy shit, this is gold. So it's basically me reading a document.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get into it.
Okie dokie. I will send you the link. Bye. Gene. The TV in the living room at my mom's house was placed in a corner, not in front of the 45-degree split couch, but more or less behind the fireplace's fakey modern exterior shelving. It was awkward since you were either on the close side of the couch facing away from the TV, or on the far side looking past the samovar. I think the idea was to look at the fireplace. My point is this: the only way to watch TV in that house was to pile all the cushions onto the couch's divider and lay with your head in the middle, with your legs propped up onto the overstuffed arm. It made you look lazy, and it wasn't even all that comfy. That summer, I had gotten into the habit of staying up all night to watch the crappy, unrated skin flicks on Cinemax. I'd go to bed at dawn, masturbate a couple times, and sleep until noon. I was lying on the couch one afternoon, as described, eating something gross. I'm sure it wasn't pretty. My mom came in, stood between me and divorce court, yelled at me for a while, and turned off the television. I used the remote and switched it back on. To fully understand why my slouching summer was so irritating to my mother, I should explain what the other man in her life was doing at the same time. But first, some history. My mom loved telling how she and Jean first met. It was her 35th birthday. Sharon and I were with our dad, and Mom decides to take herself out to eat at the fanciest place she could think of, the Hotel del Coronado. She's in the grand dining room, eating alone on her birthday. She's looking good, in one of her intense diet/exercise moments. It's 1978, so you know the room is decked out with some serious razzle-dazzle. A man walks up to her table and asks if he can sit. She has an open chair and doesn't know what to say. He's tall and charming, with a strong chin and a weak mustache. He's quite a bit older than she is, but he has a full head of hair that's just starting to salt up a little on the sides. His shirt is unbuttoned to his sternum, revealing a smooth chest and a gold chain with a chai charm. Except for the Judaism, he is almost the exact opposite of my father. So he asks me, "Are you alone?" I thought that was brazen. I tell him I had 2 kids at home. He just stands there and says, "So can I sit down or what?" I have to admit that I always liked this story, even though Jean turned out to be a dickweed. So we're sitting there, and the band, they had bands playing back then, especially at such a nice place. And they're playing a song, Mac the Knife or New York, New York, and he starts singing along, looking right at me. He was 47 at the time and had these green eyes. He doesn't care that the whole room is staring at us. He had an absolutely lovely voice. Jean did have a lovely voice, and he knew all those old songs. He asked my mom to dance, and she asked him his name. So Jean says, "Do you need to know my name to dance?" And I says, "Yes, I do." So we dance and talk, and that's that. This was August, and by October, Jean was making round trips from Los Angeles to San Diego to visit on weekends. He started staying over on the first night of Hanukkah, just after I turned 6. He was respectful of my mother's authority, and he never tried to father us in any overt way, although he did literally take the training wheels off my bike. Mom's rules were the house rules until I hit puberty. He must have really loved her. He stuck through a shitload of bullshit from us kids. He had a teenage daughter who I only met twice. Sharon and I thought she might have been a little retarded, but she only had a lisp. Jean drove us to soccer, piano, Little League, play rehearsals, Hebrew school, and came to all of our performances and games. At the time, I did not think anything of it. He was just another adult, catering to us the way they all did. As the years went on, I started to notice that Jean was showing up more than my father, and he never told me to do my homework. I often asked him to hold my hands, to warm them up. I started to love him, and I started to tell him so. Gene never judges anyone. That, according to my mother, was his greatest quality. No matter how screwy I get, he always loves me just the way I am. They got married in January 1982, exactly 2 weeks after my dad married Irene. In fact, they used the same rental company for the wedding. In fact, they were both remarried under the exact same canopy.
That's so funny. We have another waxman renting the same one in 2 weeks.
It's true. For the next several years, Gene would wake up every morning, put on a tie and jacket, and leave the house at 7:30. He'd return around 6. Gene was not working at an office, but would go and come back as if he had a regular job. He did not drink, and my mother never suspected the sort of womanizing most women would fear, especially after what she went through with my dad. No one ever asked where he was all day. We were afraid he'd lie. This went on for long enough for it to start seeming normal, even traditional. Gene would return, perhaps with a box of day-old donuts, put half of them in the freezer, and we'd sit down to dinner. We became a family with a dark spot. Not a secret, really, just a subject we worked around. How was school, kids? How was work, Mom? How are you, Gene? Gene took Mom to the Del Mar racetrack a couple times. She began noticing how every employee, from the ticket guy to the hot dog guy, knew her husband. Gene blew it off as having a familiar-looking face. He did actually look a lot like Charles Bronson. But they had known him by name. Mom's suspicions turned into guilt, which manifested into seething anger, which slipped into something close to a blind peacefulness. Gene's personal ledger was depleted, and soon Mom started noticing collective funds and personal items missing from their joint account and our house. After she found the racing stubs in his pockets, she began to take covert photographs of his car in the racetrack parking lot, just in case things got nasty. Then they bought a house together. Something happened the night we moved from University City to Pacific Beach that changed the family dynamic forever. We were stretching tape around boxes and stacking our stuff near the door, waiting for Gene to come home with the moving van. When he returned, something set him off. I don't remember what, but he threw some weird tantrum and stormed out of the house. He slammed the front door and took off in his Audi 5000. My mom, Sharon, and I were left to drag our mattresses, kitchen supplies, and everything else into the truck ourselves. Gene stayed out until we were all sleeping our last night in the house I grew up in. The next morning, Gene drove to our new house and unpacked the van like a pro. No one ever mentioned his outburst or the fact that he left us during the most stressful time of the move. That is, we never mentioned it to him. Sharon and I talked about it all the time. From then on, I saw this man, who I'd been living with since I was 6, as a joke. He wasn't in the same league as my parents, or even my stepmother. There was a time when Gene introduced me to people as his son. I now shudder to think that I ever stopped correcting him. Our new house was christened with bad vibes before we stepped over the threshold. Everything was now framed by Gene's sulking rages, which would flare up every few weeks. Sharon and I made a pact to remain calm no matter what. If Gene growled, we purred. When he threatened us with new house rules, we batted our eyes and asked him if he had already talked to our mother, which would get him even madder. He would go up to his room and slam the door and stew. My mom told the story that when Gene was growing up on the Lower East Side, his father, who was a fruit seller, was once beat up by a gang of black kids. His injuries never really healed, and he died at 40. My mom's point was that Gene could have become a typical racist, but he did not. It was just after World War II, and not being racist wasn't really a thing yet. But Gene was able to see past it and understand that these thugs were poor kids just like him, robbing another poor person. Race had nothing to do with it. So I also think about this when I talk about my feelings towards Gene. He wasn't a bad person. He just should have been in someone else's family. I knew what he wanted most was some proof of respect. I made sure to withhold anything that could be considered as such. I also made it difficult for him to offer me an olive branch. I made a personal commitment to refuse anything he tried to give me. No rides, no glasses of water during dinner. You sure you don't want a slice of pie? I can make it a la mode. You know it's bad when it's more satisfying to hurt someone's feelings than to eat pie and ice cream, and you're 14. I kept expecting him to call me out, confront me, but he never did. He never stopped asking if I needed things, and I kept politely declining. It wasn't much, but it was empowering to be able to say no. Gradual. My performance in 9th grade was poor enough to raise the eyebrows of the administrators of the 10th grade seminar program at La Jolla High School. I was not invited back into the Smart Kid class the next year, the first of many symbolic doors to be shut. But for some reason, I was still allowed to matriculate into the fancy high school with an ocean view. Not only did I get bumped from my respectable position of intellectual, I was dropped to the lowest rung of the 10th grade curriculum. It was as if I had lost my place in line. Basic biology, history, English, and first-year Spanish. Expectations were all of a sudden reduced from greatness to just graduating. My life had taken a sudden repose, a turn towards the mediocre. Terry Watkins slept over the night before graduation. He stayed at my dad's house in my attic bedroom, separated from the rest of the family. The walls were paneled in redwood, sloping at the ceiling. The stairs creaked, giving me at least a 10-second warning of intrusion, a true teenage dream. We slept on my fold-out couch, woke up early, stuffed a fan into the window, and smoked a ton of his bad pot. My graduation outfit was a shiny silk shirt in what Terry described as the color of bloody shit, a Colonel Sanders tie, and a cowboy hat. When we came downstairs for breakfast, no one had any idea of how high we were. My outfit was so distracting. Terry and I joked that we were going to ruin the graduation for all the rich kids' parents just by attending. We looked forward to our subversion for weeks, drawing detailed portraits of the shocked parents at seeing Terry, whose dyed black hair, awful complexion, and increasingly offensive fashion sense would make the yuppie parents of my schoolmates doubt their own bourgeois sensibilities. And we were going to be so stoned. The photograph, as I was handed my 9th grade diploma, shows me with unusual bashful candor. I was looking out to the audience of parents and siblings and could see my friend smiling wide. I was smiling back at him.
Confidential. Educational and Psychological Evaluation. Institute for Motivational and Development of San Diego. Name, Adam Waxman. Age, 14 years, 5 months. Date of testing, May 1st, 1988. Referred by parents. Adam represents himself with such bold relief that he actually stands out as an anachronism. His manner of dress and hairstyle are reminiscent of the youth from the 1960s. However, this alienation is not only from his peer group, but also from present-day middle-class values. It is significant that he does not perceive this alienation as painful. This is in contrast to his facial features, his manner of slow speaking, which is interspersed long pauses, his unkempt appearance, and his severe acne. This cluster epitomizes the symptom picture of depression. Thus, while he obviously presents as depressed and alienated, he denies such painful feelings and their accompanying denigrating self-evaluation. Instead, he states he has always felt down and depressed and describes this as his only experience as far as he can remember. Given the pervasiveness and continuity of his depression, his identity has developed along the lines of an alienated, disdainful youth who feels scorn and contempt for middle-class values. Consequently, his scorn and contempt for middle-class values is his way of expressing hostility away from himself, thereby sparing himself any assaults upon his person. Therefore, his provocative and depressing appearance and attire, as well as his provocative opinions, are meant to dramatize his hostility toward middle-class ideology, as well as to aggressively define his allegiance to liberal class values of the forgotten past. Significantly, he is neither a punker nor a preppy, hence he feels he doesn't fit in anywhere. He looks depressed, yet does not feel depressed, because his hatred is directed not against himself, but at others and their values. Poignantly, he is sorely lacking in the capacity to self-reflect. Thus, he has lost the ability to observe and examine himself because he is so preoccupied with finding flaws, inaccuracies, and ambiguities in the values of others that it leaves him little time to examine himself and his own sense of despair and alienation. Thus, his task is to focus his exacting scrutiny upon the ever-present ambiguities and contradictions of our middle-class ideology. However, by pointing out the discrepancies within such an ideology, he is not attempting to remedy the apparent contradictions. Rather, his sole attempt is to poke...
Okay, hold on. Okay. Hold on. Okay.
Rather,
Okay.
his sole attempt is to poke fun at the ideology, to ridicule it in the hopes that adults will likewise see the contradiction, become aware of them, and resolve them. Testing reveals he has experienced the divorce and the ensuing disillusionment with his parents as a gain for his parents, but at the expense of his need for recognition and self-worth. The only way he can safely express his anger at them and yet not risk direct exposure of his intense feelings is by underachieving and devaluing their value of education. Thus, he actively disappoints them by failing to reach his potential as he once experienced disappointment by their divorce. Despite the issues outlined above, Adam is a very intelligent young man. Thus, he has the intellectual capacity to self-reflect and analyze his issues. The foremost therapeutic task will be one wherein the therapist must feel comfortable with Adam's attack on middle-class ideology. Thus, Adam will tend to be provocative and undervaluing, and always poking fun at and pointing to the contradictions of middle-class ideology. Consequently, present-day interactions have to go over all his feelings about being in therapy and his deep sense that is just a sham and a way to fix him, which will only go for naught because he so hates the idea of being tinkered with and toyed with. If one can make contact with Adam's hatred and hostility and his fears of expressing that, I think one can go a long way towards enabling this boy to express his anger, to work through his disillusionment with middle-class ideology, to deal with the conflicts that the divorce have had upon him, and thus free him up to enjoy his genuine intellectual gifts and put them to use in an academic way where he can be successful and establish the career goals that he really wishes for himself. James Beatrice, PhD, clinical psychologist, dictated 5/1/88.
Okay, we're back.
Hi.
Aaron.
Hi, Katie.
Oh my God. I'm glad you didn't tell me what it was.
Yeah.
That's wild. It was so funny.
Is that insane?
Part of me was just like, oh, you mean a teenager? Do you know what I mean? Like the whole time?
Yes, I know. Well, and the thing is, so I have so much to say about that thing, but first of all, that was highly edited. It was actually, so what I read was probably 3 pages. I think it was 5 or 6 pages.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just like rambling and just just weird.
Yeah, super repetitive. Even what you wrote.
Even what I left in.
Or what you read, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you remember meeting with this person?
Oh my God. I remember it so well. So I chose to just read that as opposed to describe the situation,
Yeah.
But people who are my age who grew up, I don't know if it was a national or just like a San Diego thing, but there were commercials on the radio like day and night for this company. And the commercials were like, has your teenager started to withdraw?
Oh my God.
Is your teenager, do they have new friends who you don't know?
Oh my God.
Is your teenager starting to dress differently and act differently?
Give us your money and we'll tell you exactly what you told us. That they have a disdain for middle class upbringing.
I know. And just the fact that was the refrain, that it was like the disdain for middle class values. It was so Reagan. It was so like,
oh yeah. I forgot to write it down, but something like, depressive, like it's like depressing how he dresses and depressing how he like shows himself.
Yet the depression is not inward, it's outward. It's like yeah, he's like pissed,
And also like bringing in your fucking acne with it. I was
I know.
Oh my God, just get whatever. I mean, if that's your problem, give him a bar of Neutrogena soap or something, like give him a glycerin soap. Come on.
I was on like 600 milligrams of tetracycline and Retin-A and I was all hopped up on
acne meds,
creams. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I took tetracycline and then I went to summer camp and I broke out in hives.
Oh.
And that's like a medication that I'm allergic to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that's how I found out. And I broke out in hives and then I was only there for 3 weeks, but like every week we'd like switch bunks to try a different bed. And nobody wanted my bed.
Right.
And I was ostracized because I had all these hives.
Oh man. Was that drama camp?
Yeah, of course.
I remember going to the dermatologist and he goes, "So how are you doing, Aaron?" I was like, "I'm doing pretty good." And he lifts up my shirt to look at my back and he goes, "Not really."
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Cool.
Bedside manner. I honestly feel like I don't know if they would say that to an adult or if they were just like, teens don't have feelings.
Yeah. Teens don't have feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for this meeting with this, kind of quack, I intentionally dressed provocatively, as was noted.
Yes. Multiple times. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think that was probably, I was in 9th grade or something. And, a friend of mine had given me, a African dashiki.
Yes. Okay.
It's like this like green, like really like something Jimi Hendrix would have worn, So wearing, I think, that dashiki, was kind of like enough for this guy to kind of come up with his prognosis. You know what I mean?
And of course it's like even hearing that, I'm like, this is all for the parents to just like give them 100%. Money. It's just it's like telling them what they want to hear. It feels like the 60s. Like it does feel like the 60s where there's like, oh no, this child like is talking crazy about like
he's demented.
Being disillusioned by the way that he was raised. Wow. That's
So I remember like hearing these commercials all the time, and then my parents saying, we're going to take you to the Institute of Motivational Development. And I was
God.
The commercial play, like my friends, like literally, like my friends and I would literally hear that commercial on the radio and just start laughing, like, oh, it's so stupid. And then like I find myself in their offices.
Oh my
so
God.
Like there's no way I was going to take it seriously.
No,
you know
and
I
it
mean?
also reminds me, or this is all just my imagination, but like it also feels like somebody trying to get out of going to the Vietnam War by acting a little crazy. Do you know what I mean? Like showing
100%.
up or like getting out of like jury duty or something. Just like, okay, like, I know there's different stakes, but
for sure, like there was a Rorschach test, I remember, but I do remember saying these are hands touching someone's penis or ass, or I can't remember what it was, but like I definitely made it like a little bit.
It's just like extra. Every picture you're just like, masturbation. My neighbor masturbating. The angels in heaven masturbating.
Because they all look like angels, right? I mean, like it all has that kind of thing. But like, so if you say something that's kind of like weird or gross or whatever, then
they're like, totally. That whole thing was so funny, and it is like the repetitive nature of it is crazy because it's just like feels like him just like filling up pages.
And when I found that, I swear, Karen, we're all kind of going through Dad's stuff, and like there was like, all of his clothes. And it's like, does anyone want any of these clothes? It's like, no, like he was a terrible dresser, but like, do you want his like, I still wear his belt. Like I'm wearing his belt buckle right now.
Yeah,
that one with the tree on it. I always wear it. But like, there was a file that was like just had Aaron on it, and this was in there, and I remember reading it and just going like, I wish that I had this when I was a teenager so I could show my friends how cool I was.
Yeah, that's so
like
funny.
It's that kid described by that guy sounds like someone who I wanted to be friends with.
Yeah. I had never heard that story about how your mom met him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Loved the Hotel Del setting. What a like I can see it. Well, anyway, it's written great.
Oh, thanks.
It's read great. It's just sort of like I can really see it, and I can see why she fell for him in that story, especially if it's being told from her perspective, right?
Yeah.
So romantic, so like, but romantic in the way that like we are told men,
we're supposed
like
to be
strange men approaching you.
Yeah.
Can be romantic, right? As opposed to he found somebody to prey on.
A lonely looking woman.
A hot, lonely looking woman. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. He was super old school. I mean, like, he spoke with a deep Brooklyn accent, even though he'd been living in California for more than half his life. And, just like,
he was exotic.
Yeah. And he was pretty cool looking, and
Strong chin with a weak mustache is so good. So good.
Our family is not like the strongest chinned family.
We sure aren't. No.
So, I'm sure that, something in her was going like,
Oh, something different.
Yeah.
A quality piece of meat. I don't think I ever knew the stuff about, like, the racetrack or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew.
Shit. Yeah.
I don't think I really knew much about any of it.
That was super real. Like he, I may have kind of like made up a couple details here and there, to sort of fill in some gaps. But yeah, he definitely spent his life savings at the track.
Did he not have a job ever?
So he got his real estate license and then just never did anything with it. He just kind of like, it's like, I'm meeting some people. They're going to buy a 7-Eleven. But then like, I don't think he did a single thing. And then he just would like literally go out and then come back.
Wow. But also, the other thing.
Yeah.
The sentence that you wrote near the end of that one, something like the line, that you would rather hurt someone than eat pie. Something like that.
Oh yeah, it's more satisfying to hurt someone's feeling than to eat pie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, how do you feel now?
Oh no. Am I that petty? Am I still that petty?
Uh-huh.
Oh, fuck off. Oh. I mean, for sure back then, like I didn't have that much in my arsenal. You know what I mean? And like, and sort of like being cold to this person was really gratifying. I think I would accept some pie and ice cream now.
You heard it here first.
I would eat some pie. I would eat some pie.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I was, because I know that feeling. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've had to do that a lot, but I know that feeling, and like I definitely have done that in the past. Sort of just like, I don't need anything from you. One thing that did make me, that was kind of fun to listen to you read was how you and Karen were a united front about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that was the case, because it would have been probably rough to have the other way.
Yeah. We were definitely in lockstep. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just thinking about your question about that, and like I've definitely like thinking about how you respond when you're like confronted with someone who you like can't deal with,
Yeah.
It's a real skill that I think people have to learn to be able to communicate in ways that where like you both let your guard down and also hold your ground at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think as a kid, like you don't necessarily, unless you're like, really gifted,
with
emotional gifted.
Intelligence early on. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
No, I mean, it was clear in your writing too. That you, I think you even said it made you feel powerful, which I think, for teenagers, you're right. Like they don't have a lot of tools, and that definitely is one of them. And sometimes, they sort of come out of it, and sometimes they don't, probably.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed these 3 chapters.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them.
I am so gratified to hear that.
I knew you would be.
You want to hear what's coming next?
Yeah, what's up? What's on the docket?
I think you'll like these next ones. I get in trouble. I get caught with drugs.
Ruh-roh.
And we also meet who will end up being my best friend and real partner in crime, who was a the most enigmatic person I've ever met, and who actually, like, my friendship with him was the catalyst for writing any of these down.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Speaking of him, I think I know who it is. Did you write the story of when I sliced, or when I went at the ice skating rink? Did you write that down?
It is that same guy, and you know what? No, that's not in here. Maybe we'll tell
that story next episode.
Yeah, next episode, Blood on the Ice.
Okay, I love you.
I love you too.
Bye. It's called Shitty Stepdads, and I think it's gonna be huge.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend and subscribe. Your 5-star rating will help others find this fucking podcast. Please check out the show notes for links to Katie's comedy and a full transcript of the show. La Jolla Babylon Season 1, The Making of a Suburban Punk, was written, produced, and edited by Aaron Hartman. With music by Aaron Hartman, co-piloted by Katie Hartman. Presented in association with Ruinous Media. To hear more episodes of this show or other Ruinous Media podcasts, please go to ruinousmedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts.